Cape's Big Wake Up, 6 to 9 a.m.
13, touching on 14 after 8 o'clock. It's almost time for us to hit the road. All right. So, talking about back to life, back to reality and so on. Festive is over and we need to start sinking our teeth into some of the serious stuff in life. Got an email in from a mom saying, what do I do, and are you able to provide any level of help and assistance around an issue? And the reason I'm highlighting this issue in particular is because maybe, the dynamics are unique. Interpersonal drama between parents and almost the children being at the receiving end or the victims of, that is a common theme, a common thread. So I'm using this one to highlight and to showcase an issue. So let's get the mom on the line, and for I suppose purposes of anonymity, we're just going to call her Tanya. It's not her real name, and I'll declare that up front, but we need to call her something. And I think you can appreciate, once you hear the story, you can appreciate just why it is we're choosing to keep her details private. But she's on the line with us. So, Tanya, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us here at our breakfast. You are the mom of a child. You ply your trade abroad, and you now sit with a problem where your former partner is saying, I will not sign a form that says my child can leave, right?
That is correct. Thank you so much for having me this morning. It's an honor to be speaking with you and the breakfast team.
Yeah.
So, currently find myself in a situation where I'm set to leave South Africa shortly within the next few weeks. However, the father is, who is South African as well, resides abroad and is withholding consent unless I meet certain financial conditions related to our separation or our ongoing separation and not our child. So, despite me trying to focus on our child's well-being and education, I feel like he's just his personal issues towards me is hindering his daughter's future.
And sadly, this is a trend or this is a practice we hear of we hear of so often, where a partner would say, listen, unless you do this, I'm not going to sign this document. I'm not going to allow my child to do this. I mean, we've had horror stories where kids can't be enrolled at certain schools, or parents are not wanting to accept the financial responsibility of a choice that the other partner makes. Is this, as far as you're concerned, is this pure malice? I mean, is there any merit to the stance that your former partner is taking?
Oh, Aden, it's just been so difficult just being able to communicate. It's this back and forth via emails all the time. And, I'm trying to, be humble in my approach, but so far I've been unsuccessful. And again, the main concern for me is just getting my child reinstated in a school, seeing that, South Africa just started off with the school year. However, I cannot do that for her, wanting to, give her the best possible opportunities abroad. So, it's just frustrating. I don't know what to do. I don't know how else to go about it. I don't know who I can contact or how to expedite this matter. As obviously, and I'm sure most moms can relate, you don't want to be separated from your kids. So what do I do?
And I'm assuming that there are various approaches to trying to settle disputes. You play nicely, you play hardball, you eat humble pie.
Yeah.
You become the bigger person. I mean, you've been through this whole process, have you? I
have. So I'm now at a point where I don't know which way to turn anymore. I just want to find out the quickest possible way to expedite this, as in getting maybe full custody, to be able to just get her reinstated in the school abroad. Because the other thing, Aden, is we've lived abroad for so many years, so my child speaks, reads, and writes in the other language. So she's so much more comfortable and confident in this language that it's considered her first language, as well as this country is considered our new home. Now, my question is, the father is abroad. How is it possible that he holds so much power? And again, like you mentioned, not contributing to the well-being of the kid, yet he holds so much power to not, or to withhold this consent. It's frustrating. Sorry.
And the father in this case lives in a different country from the one that you and your child are wanting to settle in.
That is correct.
It's one of those nightmare scenarios, and I don't know that too many people listening at the moment have had exactly the same set of circumstances that they've needed to deal with. But I'm sure there are very many moms and dads who can vouch for the fact that there was something that they tried to do where the other parent withheld permission, which is rooted either in revenge or malice, or issues like those. I mean, here's a voice note in quickly from somebody. Let's give it a listen before I get our lawyer friend to come on the line with us.
I wish I could utter the words on air what that guy really needs now. Why must the children suffer? Why can't he just consent to this? That's pure spitefulness.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, that's, just in listening to the set of circumstances you've outlined there, Tanya, that's exactly what people are feeling. I'm going to put you on hold, but you'll be able to hear the conversation. So I'm just going to put you there for a second. And at this point, I'm somebody we've reached out to in the past. Nicolene Schoeman-Louw is an attorney and MD at SchoemanLaw Inc., who joins us on the line now. Nicolene, very good morning. Thanks so much for your time. Happy New Year to you and yours. I'm sure you heard Tanya's story, and this is an all too often occurrence, where parents are not wanting to sign documents. They almost victimize their own children out of spite, out of malice, out of a sense of revenge.
Thank you so much for having me, as always, and the same to you and all the listeners. Happy New Year. I suppose we should stop saying that sometime soon.
Yes.
But be that as it may, regrettably, I think many people can share in the experience of a separation or a divorce and a situation where one of the parents are, simply put, not acting in the best interest of the child. They are acting from a place of malice, from hurts, from, a personal agenda, let's call it that. And, if we look at this, and I often say this to couples intending to get married, where we draft the antenuptial contracts, your arrangements between yourselves as partners, as spouses, and how you'll take financial decisions, ultimately how you'll raise children together, the decision-making is one point, and the well-being of the child has to underpin every decision that you jointly make. But the issues of access to children, custody, guardianship, and all of that is a separate issue to the issues you may be having on who gets the house, who gets this investment, or whatever the case may be, and whatever may be the cause of this feeling of hurt. So the point is the two must be kept separate at all times. That's the right thing to do. And at the end of the day, every decision we take as parents has to be in order to ensure that we have our children's best interests at heart. So if the listeners' separation has not yet been finalized in a court, it is critically important to add this section or this issue as one of the issues to be determined by court, right? So if the matter is not yet finalized, there's a possibility of bringing a separate, what we call a interlocutory application. It can be done on an urgent basis, or for you, if no court component has started as yet, to start the process and to be proactive by including it. But of course, we need to be we need to act swiftly. The school year is starting and all of that.
For sure, and that's exactly what I was going to say. You say brought on an urgent basis. We know the wheels of justice turn very slowly. Here's a mom who's at her wit's end. She's not able to take her child back to the country that they now call home. Has got to try and enroll this child into our education system. How urgently would the courts view something like this? Because past experience tells us it takes months and months and months to get a thing heard.
Absolutely. So that's exactly why the attorney and advocate would be assisting the listener would have to bring it on an urgent basis, which means it dispenses with the normal timelines on notice and that sort of thing. And it can be done literally within a few days. So if we do it today and it's critically urgent, we can be heard in a day or two's time. And I do feel, given what we are dealing with here, a few days here or there could definitely be something that we could justify if we launched a process of that nature. Now, that's the one aspect that we need to deal with. And I'll briefly want to say that there's a slightly more robust, aggressive approach that could also be taken, and that is to, in simple terms, strip the ex-spouse from his or her parental rights completely, right? But that's a very aggressive approach, which means the listener will have sole custody, will be the sole guardian of the minor child, and he will essentially have no rights to his child any longer.
And what would you need to prove in order to do that? And I'll, as much as we're dealing with this case and we're using it as a talking point, I have in the past had and it generally is moms who approach us because the dads are not willing to play ball. But you know, we've had kids who've been selected, for instance, to go on international sports tours. Home Affairs wants both parents present to sign for a passport. The father would just point blank refuse. And it's a way of getting at the mother using the child. It's so sad that you've got parents, and generally it's fathers, who are prepared to victimize and emotionally brutalize their kids because they've got a score to settle with their ex. I mean, it's an horrific practice, but we see it over and over. What happens in those cases where it's just the father, as much as you don't want to strip him of his rights, you want a remedy in law to say you've actually just got to do the right bloody thing for once in your life?
Yes. So just to reiterate, the stripping of the parental rights is an extreme remedy, not easily granted by our courts. So there needs to be, it needs to go beyond the horrors of what you've just described.
Yeah.
It must be substantially worse. Or the father in this case must consent to saying, you know what, I want out, completely lock, stock and barrel. Now, that doesn't take his obligation away, though, from paying maintenance. And in some cases, that becomes a bit of a technical issue to resolve. But let's not go down that route. What can parents do that are facing it, right? This situation. That's the key question. This is, unfortunately, more prevalent than I would like to admit. Most of us have heard someone's story. The point is, I think you need a really good family law lawyer, right? From the start, if you are getting separated and you are married, you need to get formally divorced. And if there's any chance that this kind of thing can happen, we need to be more proactive. And we are seeing a lot of parents actually doing that, to say, let's include provisions in our parenting plans for if there's an opportunity like this, how are we going to deal with it? Or in the court order, as the case may be. So we need to see or predict that, is this a reality between my spouse and I? And if this is going to become an issue, how are we going to unbundle this proactively? So in your divorce decree or your parenting plan, it's a good inclusion if you think your spouse or ex-spouse is potentially the personality type where this can become an issue. If you didn't foresee it or we couldn't foresee it, you can always approach court. And if it is urgent, we don't have to wait for months on end.
All right. In your professional experience, Nicolene, final one very quickly, where it comes to issues of relocation, how do the courts decide? Because you have a parent who says, actually, no, my child can't go and live in Johannesburg, can't go and live in Durban. I want him or her living in the city where I'm living. You've got the other parent saying, well, my job is taking me there. That's where opportunity goes. I've been transferred by my company. It becomes an emotional yo-yo and the kids get caught up in the middle. How generally would the courts decide on this?
That's a very difficult situation. So usually there's a team of professionals involved in the decision making, such as social workers and psychologists, who try to collect as much information as possible, underpinned by the thought of the best interest of the child. Which parents should the child be living with? What keeps things stable and familiar for the child? What is best for that specific individual child? Every child is different, and if they're a little bit older, usually we ask them, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And hopefully, all of these things always have to be informed by what is best for my child. And I think we sometimes forget that as parents, maybe innocently so. It's not a malicious thing. For example, getting transferred to a new location is good for the career, inevitably good for my family if I can earn more, etc. But we need to remember that from an emotional point of view, it is a complex scenario, and we have to have these discussions if our children are old enough, get them involved, have a family sit down, get it facilitated if the relationship is not stable enough for us to do this privately. Get a psychologist or a social worker involved, and make sure that your legal support team is connected well enough with all these role players, that they ask the right questions, that listen to you, and that we follow all the correct recourses as the case may be.
Okay, I'm going to park it there. Nicolene, thanks very much for your time. I'm going to go back to Tanya, we've still got on the line. You've obviously been listening to that. It doesn't seem as if there's an easy solution to this. I mean, was any of that helpful?
No, it definitely was. I listened to the fact that you mentioned, bring this interlocket application, and that it can actually be done within a few days. So I definitely will try that approach and see if I'm successful or not.
All right. I mean, obviously the dynamics involving somebody who's no longer in the country. I mean, you're hearing an issue around somebody who effectively, I mean, this child of yours is a de facto citizen of another country. I mean, you as the mom don't live here, neither does the father. I mean, it's mad that the South African justice system needs to decide this. But unfortunately, those are the odds in your favor. Can we reach out to you in a couple of weeks and just see how this one is moving along?
Of course, no problem.
All right, okay. I'm going to park it there for this morning, and thanks very much to, I guess, Tanya, also to Nicolene Schoeman-Louw from Schoeman Attorneys. Really appreciate her time, her insight this morning. SchoemanLaw Inc. is the name of the legal firm. Really appreciate her insights this morning. Being flooded with WhatsApps. People saying, listen, similar kind of scenario. Somebody, in an instance, a father who's not contributed anything to the child for 16 years. Why does Home Affairs still need the father's consent? This is the system failing us single mothers. It's the plight of single moms in a big way that we're dealing with here this morning on Hard Breakfast. We'll pick it up with our news team in just a moment.
This is Hard Breakfast.